Okay, hello everybody. So, I'm just going to wait a second here and make sure that everything actually seems to be working properly because I got my second monitor or my other computer actually over here that I kind of use to double check that the stream is working, and it looks like it is. So this way I can pay attention to the chat and stuff while still doing some work. So, basically, today what I'm going to be working on is me and Steve are sort of planning out this free Tailwind course that I want to put up on the Tailwind doc site just to kind of help people learn Tailwind, especially people who aren't like super great at CSS. So with something like Bootstrap, it's a little bit easier to make stuff even if you're not super experienced with CSS, whereas because Tailwind is so low level, a lot of time people just don't even know how to solve a particular problem when all you have is like really low level primitives like, absolute positioning and flexbox and whatever. So what me and Steve did is we kind of designed this app called Workcation, which is kind of like an Airbnb sort of app. And what I want to do today is try and build a bunch of it to sort of learn for myself where some of the challenges are and what's going to be easy and what's going to be hard, because we just kind of designed all this in Figma just to kind of do it kind of quickly. And I haven't actually built any of it with Tailwind at all yet. So what this stream is basically going to be, and maybe future streams too, as I kind of hammer through all this stuff, is just kind of following along as I build this out for the first time and learn kind of what's necessary to pull it off. So it won't quite be what the course is going to be. The course is going to be a much more polished version of this, but should still be pretty interesting and pretty fun to watch me stumble through using my own framework. Sorry that I talk too slow, everybody. Everyone's complaining in the chat already. Really sad. Okay, so anyways, we got this app. Me and Steve designed it at a bunch of different layouts. So we got like the regular sort of desktop view here, which is Tailwind sort of 1280 pixel breakpoint. It's got this sidebar. And the idea here is that this sidebar area, like inside here, would be scrollable if the window got shorter. So that'll make for some interesting things that we have to do with Tailwind. We have some sort of overlapping cards, which is kind of an interesting Tailwind challenge in some ways. Not really a challenge, but just kind of an interesting thing. We got some custom form elements. We could be working with a bunch of icons and SVGs and stuff. And we even have like, some pretty interesting responsive stuff. So this sidebar actually becomes like a collapsible horizontal filter menu. So the idea would be that normally you only kind of see like this much, and this menu can expand to show this stuff. And when you click the filters button, that expands to show this stuff. So I've created a blank Vue CLI app, and we're going to use that just kind of scaffold this out because it's kind of a nice little development environment. And if we want to extract some components or we want to do some interactivity or anything, that's going to be really easy. So I'll show you what I got. So I just created a blank Vue CLI project. I haven't even installed Tailwind or anything yet. So let's start by doing that. So first things first, we'll do yarn add Tailwind CSS. And while that's running, I'm going to create a post.css config file. So we'll create a new file here called post.css.config.js. Head over to our package.json because I think we already have a post.css config here, but I'd rather do it in a separate file. So let's do module.exports equals a plugins array. And in here, we will require Tailwind CSS, and we'll pull an auto prefixer too, which Vue CLI kind of has by default, so we don't really have to worry about installing it ourselves. Okay, so we got Tailwind. Now we just have to kind of actually set it up to use it. So there's a couple different ways you can do this depending on how much custom CSS you plan to write, but I think we'll start by just doing it in the app.vue component. So if we just take this style block, we can just dump in Tailwind base, Tailwind components, Tailwind utilities, and Vue will automatically process all your style blocks with post.css, so things will just kind of work. So we'll keep this hello world component even though we're not actually going to use it, in case just so that when we commit this project we don't lose the components folder. So let's just clear this out since this view app doesn't actually need any behavior yet. And we'll just kind of start doing some stuff up here. So first things first, why don't we just like test that the Tailwind feels like it's working. So we can just create like an H1 that's like hello from Tailwind. Add a class to it, maybe like text 6XL, font bold, text purple 500 or something. And I'll just start up the view CLI server. Different tools use serve or dev. I never remember which one it is. Cool little tip if you use yarn anyways. You can just type yarn run and it'll actually give you a list of all the commands that are available in your package.json file. Okay, so there we go. Looks like Tailwind is working. All right, so sort of what I think is the easiest workflow with Tailwind, because all of the responsive CSS stuff works mobile first, like you kind of layer everything on top, like the unprefixed utilities apply to all screens, then the SM prefix ones apply to small and up, the medium applies to medium and up. I think the smoothest development experience is to design or implement the mobile version first. So let's start by just trying to implement this screen here and see where we get with that, and then just kind of work through that a little bit at a time. So I think we're going to have to do a bunch of work to kind of grab these assets and stuff out of here. So why don't we start by just getting like kind of the basic blocks into place, and then we can like export this logo and optimize it and stuff like that, and export maybe these icons and just see if we can get everything kind of working. So this is what I'm going to do. See if we can make this work in terms of space. Since we're designing the mobile one, we can turn on responsive design mode here. Maybe go to like a iPhone. I wonder what dimensions we did for this one. It would be nice if we just design it at this exact dimension, 375. So that's like a regular iPhone 7 sort of size. Now we might want to just get rid of the dev tools for a second. Maybe we can go to the right. I'm trying to figure out a way that we can get this at 100% and still fit the dev tools a little bit so that we can do some tinkering there if necessary. Okay, so this seems kind of like a good start, and we'll just keep our editor over here at kind of 50% size and work from there. Let's get rid of this UI. Okay, so the first thing that we should do here is just kind of create the basic building blocks for this thing. So I'm going to start with, I guess, like a header element that we can use for probably both. No, because this ends up being a sidebar. So we'll just use the header element for the top section. And then for the sidebar, there's probably a more semantic element we can use, maybe a section. And then for the other area, we'll use main. Something I've been really interested in lately is learning how to use HTML properly, because I feel like, as stupid as it sounds, I am not an expert in knowing the exact right places to use like an aside tag or an article tag, or are you allowed to have multiple H1s on a page, those sorts of things. So I've been kind of digging into that lately, which has been kind of interesting. So we're going to try and do things right in that regard here as well. So we kind of got the basic building blocks in place here. This header is going to have the background of the darkest gray in Tailwind, I think. And the way that we have this stuff set up in Figma, Steve's created like layer styles for everything. So you can actually see he's got all the Tailwind colors in Figma. So as long as he's designing with these colors, it makes it easy for me to just reference and see, okay, so he's using gray 900. So we'll just do BG gray 900 here. This section is going to be BG gray 800. And I don't know when you're allowed to use an aside element. I'm not sure if an aside element should be used for sidebars or if it's for secondary content that's not important. Never, I'm sure. And then for this main section, which I guess is actually the whole page, I think he's got BG Gray 100. That kind of surprises me. For some reason, I thought on the larger screen sizes, it was BG Gray 200. But let's see. Yeah, it's BG Gray 200 over there. So I think we should stick with BG Gray 200. This is probably a little bit of a slip up. It's going to look basically the same anyways. All right. So we'll make the whole app BG Gray 200. Another thing that we should do if we want things to look pretty similar now, Steve's actually using a different font here, but we're going to use the system font to start. By default, all these design tools, they render text as anti-aliased instead of subpixel anti-aliased. So we should probably do that it'll make it a little bit easier for us to compare what we're doing with the design to see if it actually feels correct. Okay, so this isn't really going to look like anything yet. But if we drop some text in here, like Workcation, yeah, so we got hot reloading enabled and all that stuff. So that way we can make little changes and things should update pretty quickly. Now they're actually updating a little bit slower than I expected, and I'm wondering if that's because of how we have things set up here. It's probably recompiling the CSS every time. So why don't we try a different approach? So in assets, let's create a new file. We'll call it css/tailwind.css. And I'm just going to grab this stuff and pull it into here. If you hear my kid crying in the background, it's because she's very grumpy today. And then here, if I'm not mistaken, I think Vue lets you do like a source tag on style attributes, kind of like you can with script tags. So we could go dot/assets/css/tailwind.css. And let's see. Okay, so things seem to still be working. Now I'm curious if this updates faster now that it's in a separate file. Yeah, it updates way faster. So now Vue is smart enough to not recompile the CSS because that's in a separate file and we're only changing this component. So it saves Vue a lot of work, which is kind of nice. All right, cool. So we kind of got that in place. Here, we're going to have like an input and filters button. So why don't we just kind of like drop those in as like little placeholders? We don't need to type on that. And this will just be a button that'll say filters. It'll have an icon eventually. Placeholder. Here we'll just say search by keywords. And this is going to have an icon next to it at some point too, but we're just kind of getting the basic bones in place here. So Los Angeles here isn't going to be an H1, but we actually don't have an H1 on the page, and we probably should, but we can leave that for later. I think it's probably okay to make it like an H2. Maybe it should actually be like an H3. I think it should be an H3 and eventually, because what I'd like to do, based on some of the research that I've been doing about how to use headings properly, is for web apps, what's kind of recommended is that you have an H1 for like the site, and then each section kind of gets its own title as an H2, and you use like visually hidden helpers to kind of just hide these so they appear in the document outline, but they don't actually appear on the screen. And that makes it easier for screen readers to kind of jump to the different sections of your page. So we actually might have an H2 for the main section that's hidden that kind of says like search results or something, even though we don't actually show it. And then Los Angeles is going to be like an H3 under there. So we'll just kind of get some of this content in here. Live like the stars in these luxurious Southern California estates. And then we're going to have a bunch of these cards. So let's not get into the cards yet. We'll work on just getting this header stuff styled. So here we go, looking pretty fantastic. So let's go ahead and get this logo exported. So I'm just going to grab the logo. I'm going to paste it somewhere else. And let's see. So it looks like it's 187 by whatever. I think we can probably just kind of eyeball the size of it. I find that's sometimes the best way to go when you have weird shapes that kind of poke out by a pixel or two in some places. So we'll just give it a background just so we can see what we're doing. And let's see, probably if you want to go right to the edge, something like that is good. And then we can, oh crap, we can shrink this down. See if we can make it one shorter. We're gonna have to get rid of these constraints maybe. Oh no, it seems okay. Something that's always confused me with Figma is when you resize things, they kind of move in unexpected ways sometimes. So let's just set this height to 32 pixels, and then we'll move the logo up a pixel. So we got a little bit of breathing room around everything. And then we can resize this to like there. That seems like it'll probably be fine. Now, one thing is I think this is actually using a font, but we can flatten this to outlines. It's going to be a little bit tricky actually, because I think once we do this, we're going to lose that color, which we do. So we'll duplicate this layer and then we'll edit it. So the first version will just have just the work part. And then the second copy will just have the cation part. And this way we can style the color on this the way we want. I think he's using Indigo 300. Yeah, so this should be okay. This should kind of do what we want. So we can probably ungroup this because we're just going to export the whole frame. So we don't want to show the background color in the export. We're going to export it as an SVG. And sometimes I wonder actually, can I just copy this as an SVG? Oh, I can. That's even better. So now if we go to SVG OMG, this is a tool for SVG optimization that I use all the time. We can grab the SVG and then we can work on getting this into the actual app. So here where we have this header, I'm just going to throw the SVG in there. And okay, so it shows up. It's obviously not like the right size or anything, but we can figure out kind of the size that we want based on here. So I think we exported at 32, right? Which is pretty reasonable, which is 2 rem, which is going to be a height of 8 in Tailwind. So if we do like a class here, we can do H8, W auto. One thing that sucks about sizing SVGs actually that aren't square is that you can't do auto heights or auto widths in IE11, but I think we just won't support IE11. How's that sound? Sounds pretty good to me. So there we go. That's kind of like the right dimensions. Now we're going to need some padding. So let's just go back to like our regular view here. Let's see. How does this work again? So it looks like Steve's got 17 pixels of padding on the side just because he's sloppy. So we'll make that 16, which is a rem. So all we're going to want to do here is do some horizontal padding on this element. So like px4. And then what do we got here? It's got 14 on the top. So we can either do 16 or 12. I think 12 will be okay because we actually made the image 2 pixels taller than it needed to be. So 12 is going to be py3 because that's 3/4 of our rem. So that should get us, yeah, pretty close in terms of the kind of position of things. Okay, so next is this hamburger icon. So we'll grab that too. So Steve's got it here. I think he probably has this exported already somewhere that I could probably grab. So let me see. I can grab some stuff from the refactoring UI icon set. He's probably got something called menu here. Yeah, perfect. So we'll just grab this menu icon and we'll slam that over here. We should probably put it in a button since it needs to be clickable. And I'm not sure what the view box is on this in terms of like, it's drawn in a 24 by 24 artboard, but I'm not sure how Steve sized it. So let's just give it some classes and see what we get. So let's start with, let's think, I don't know, we'll just do like H6W6, just kind of arbitrary, and see what the dimensions look like. What's the bug here? Duplicate attribute class. Okay, so we can get rid of this class. And we don't need the classes on the actual path either. Okay, so there it is down there. Actually kind of looks like there's some weird pixel rounding. So let's see what color Steve is using for gray 500. So in Tailwind, we can style SVGs by using the text color utilities. So if we set the fill of this to be the current color, then we can use text gray 500, which sets the current color to gray, and then we should see it kind of working like that. So we want to slam this all the way to the right. So the easiest way to do that is with Flexbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this header a flex container, and that should get these side by side essentially. And now if we want to put this all the way to the right, we can use justify content space between. So if we do justify between, that should slam it all the way to the right. Ooh, that took a little bit of a surprising result. I wonder why it's off screen. So in this case, we can, something I do to debug stuff like this is I'll just add a 1 pixel red outline to everything on the screen. 1 pixel solid red. And then we can try and find out like what's causing this to be too wide. And it's actually not really clear to me what's causing this to be too wide. If we just take this button away, still too wide. Is it this section? Still too wide. Is it the P tag? Still too wide. Is it this tag? Still too wide. Is it this SVG? Something about this SVG. What on earth is going on? The only thing I can think is this W auto is somehow causing a problem. If we just made this like 5 rem arbitrarily, no, it's still happening. But yeah, I was about to try that too. Wrap the SVG in a div. See what happens. Probably will fix everything. No, it doesn't. Wow, this is a surprising turn of events. If we just put like hello in here and we just comment this out, and look, we still have horizontal scrolling. Now there's a root cause to this. Like we don't need to try and treat the symptoms here. There's something funky going on that is making things behave in a non-sane way. Look, it's still too wide. So that's 375 by 48. 375 by 48. This could just be like a weird responsive design mode thing. And yeah. So it turns out it was fine all along, and it was just the browser bugging out. As you can see, fuck. Oh man, technology. All right, so we want to center this with the logo. So I'm going to set this not to be mobile, by the way. Is that not changeable? If we go to responsive and we go to 375, we can say, isn't there supposed to be a thing that shows me the device type? Yeah, desktop. Okay. All right. Well, that was a waste of time. So if we want to center this, we can just do item center, and those should become centered, but they're not becoming centered because why? Because this button needs to, what's the height of the button? 24 by 24. Maybe it is centered. Just seems surprising to me that I didn't have to do anything to make it centered. Items start, items end, items center. Yeah, I guess it is centered. That's weird that it just was magically centered. That seems unlikely, to be honest. I'm going to wrap this in a div anyways, because I kind of like the idea of there being a container for the left section and a container for the right section, really honestly too. So now centering these divs doesn't really make a difference because this div is kind of full height. So we can fix that by doing something like, actually, you know what? I'm a little bit surprised that that is 30 pixels tall. This is 32 pixels tall. This is 30 pixels tall. It's because the button has line height probably. We could probably just make this flex and that'll probably solve all our problems. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So we kind of got the outline of that in place. Now we can kind of work on, I wish I could, is there any way for me to hide the layers panel? Yes, perfect. So this way we can still see our styles, but we don't actually need the layers. All right, so let's work on this input. Okay, so we'll give it a class. It's going to be the darkest background, so it's going to be BG Gray 900. We're probably going to want to have like text white. Now the placeholder color doesn't match perfectly, but we'll have to think about how we want to solve that. I think he's using 8 pixel border radius, so let's round it LG. And we should probably add the same padding to this box that we have on the other one. Although it looks like there's probably less. 10. Steve, you're killing me with these random values. All right, so we'll start with PX for PY3. So it's going to be a little bit taller than the design. I think it'll probably work out okay though. Admittedly, the 10 pixels thing does look nice. Here, Steve has like a less of a padding here. I'm going to call that an accident. But that's okay. So for this input, we're going to want some padding and stuff too. So I think we can just kind of start by playing this stuff by ear. Just kind of eyeballing it and get it looking nice. We're going to want the input and the button kind of spread left and right, kind of like we did before. So we'll make this, we'll do the same sort of thing with flex justify between. Okay, so we've got this kind of search thing sort of generally in place. Got this magnifying glass. So let's see if we can find that. It's probably in here as search. Yeah, so we'll grab the search icon. Okay, so let's work through how we can actually get this icon appearing next to the desktop, or sorry, next to the input. So we can't actually like put the icon in the input, of course, right? The best we can do is sort of put it near the input. So I'm going to get rid of these classes because we're just going to add our own. And this primary class can go. Secondary can go. Yeah. But we are going to want like a container for this stuff. So I'm going to wrap these in a div. And then we're going to use like absolute positioning to sort of get things in the right spot. So we're going to make this relative so that we can position this SVG absolutely within it. And I'm going to wrap the SVG in a div too for reasons I'll explain in a second. So we're going to take this div and we're going to make it position absolute. And we're going to say that this div should be pinned to the top and bottom of the parent, which we can do with inset y0. And it should be pinned to the left, which we can do with left 0. So this SVG, we're going to give it like H6W6 maybe, fill current, and then like text gray 500, just something to see if we can get it showing up. So one thing that kind of sucks about this SVG is the inside isn't cut out. So it's not meant to show the background color, which is kind of annoying to me. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to edit Steve's SVG and re-export it ourselves. All right, so let's bring it back our layers panel here. So we've got the magnifying glass. Now, if we just hide this, what do we get? Yeah, so if we give this a different color, what do we even get? Like, what's the reason this even exists? Okay, so we're just going to delete this, and we're just going to export this SVG without that part. We'll go re-optimize it. We'll just use this one instead. Okay, so we can get rid of this fill. And all the classes are gone already, so now we'll just go back to H6, W6, fill, current, text gray, 500. It's catching up on chat here. I haven't really been reading. Yeah, so you can copy the SVG out of Figma, but the problem is this SVG is a 20 by 20 square, right? Because it's just the path of the SVG, but we want the whole icon system to be drawn on the same size artboard. So one thing, problem that you'll run into if you just like copy this as an SVG is that your icons are in different size view boxes. The way that me and Steve designed all these icons is no matter the shape of the icon, like if I throw all these in here, you'll see they're all on a 24 by 24 pixel view box. So they're all drawn on that artboard. So one difference that you'll notice between like, so here's like this 20 by 20 magnifying glass, right? And it goes all the way to the edge. The one that I just exported is 24 by 24, and the icon is like centered within it. And Steve kind of visually balanced everything to make the icons all cohesive and work well together. And the benefit here of having everything on the same size artboard is that when I use utilities like H6W6, I can use the same size on any icon, and those icons are going to be rendered at the correct relative size to each other, right? So you can imagine that certain icons just don't take up as much space. Like for example, this remove icon, it's not even square. It's going to be like 12 pixels by 2 pixels or something, right? Which makes it very hard to size with Tailwind utilities because we can't maintain the correct aspect ratio. But if the icon is exported in a 24 pixel by 24 pixel artboard, then I can always size everything as a square, and size 6 always means the same thing. Like if I put this remove icon next to like whatever, this shield icon or whatever, and I give them both the same utilities, they're going to look proportional. They're going to look correct. Whereas if I exported them at the bare minimum view box size for the actual contents, then making the remove icon H6 is going to make this bar 6 tall. So it's going to be a way bigger icon than any of the other icons. So we always make sure that we always draw and export our icons on square artboards that are always the same size, because it makes it a lot easier to work with them. Okay, so anyways, we've kind of got the start of this in place. Looks like 600 or 500 is a little too much. 600 is probably good. Does this have some transparency on it? Something about that looks a little funky. I think it's the text that has the transparency on it. Because there's definitely no transparency on this. If I make this like text red 500, yeah, weird. It must be, looks like the placeholder is sitting on top. That's bizarre that the placeholder is drawn on top, but the text is drawn underneath. Truly odd, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter to us. Okay. So we need to get this in the right spot. So the reason that I used a div here to wrap the SVG, historically what you might have done, right, is you might have like put this SVG in the right spot, and something that I used to do in the past, and I know other people have done, is you just tinker with these values, right? You have like top 2 pixels or whatever. Sorry, say this is like a position relative, and you'll just kind of like manipulate this with these like very hard coded values, like left 4 pixels, and just kind of like get it where you want it to be. Like how many times have you had these like weird values in your code because you're just trying to like position an icon? So the way that I prefer to do it is to try and do it in a more declarative, kind of like reactive way. So instead of just like specifying the exact offset, what I'd rather do is create a div that wraps it, and see how this div is the full height of the input. By making it the full height of the input, I can set it to display flex and then just tell it to automatically center anything inside of itself. And now that magnifying glass is perfectly centered. So whereas with the other solution of top 7 pixels, if the input got taller, the magnifying glass wouldn't be centered anymore, right? It would always be 7 pixels from the top, which is useless. In this case, if we were to change the height of this to like 10 pixels or whatever, and it's hard to see, actually this is a bad example because we're not changing the height of the element that has the background color. Say we were to change the height of this to like 20 pixels. You can see as this grows, the magnifying glass always stays centered. So it's a much more accurate way of sort of telling the browser how you want it to be positioned by giving it like the right constraints and the right relative place. Okay, so now to get it positioned to the left, what I would do is I would add some left padding to this div. So we can start with maybe like PL2 and kind of see like, where does Steve have the, he's got to inset quite a bit. So I think we're probably going to want like at least PL3. Let's start with PL3 and then update the placeholder positioning and see how it looks. So see how we have PX4 on the input here. That's basically saying we want the same padding on the left and right. We actually want the padding on the left to be a lot more now because of the fact that we have to account for the magnifying glass. So if we wanted to like just do it mathematically in our heads, right, we could think, well, this is set to 6, this is set to 3, 3 plus 6 is 9, plus we would want probably this original padding of 4 next to the 9, that's like 13. So we probably want like 12 or something close to 12. And if I'm smart, yeah, that's pretty close to looking good, I would say. Like Steve has it a little bit tighter. So we could try 10. And like that's probably not too bad. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Now we can't style the placeholder color directly with Tailwind, so that can be a problem for future us because it is something that probably would be good to handle. But for now, we'll just kind of let this be like that. Okay, so one thing that would be kind of cool maybe is to come up with some sort of focus styling for this that isn't as crappy as that. Not sure what the best way to do it would be. We could like lighten the background slightly, you know? So we could say like focus outline none to get rid of the ugly browser one and just do like 800. Or we could, yeah, that's not going to work. Or we could like totally invert the whole thing and we could like set it to white. Now this might be like too aggressive, and we're gonna have to like change the placeholder color too. But let's just see what happens if we go like focus text gray 900. Like that's actually not too bad. It's a little bit of a high contrast extreme thing, but I like it. It's okay to remove the outline as long as you provide like a different focus style. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is probably a pretty decent treatment here. I kind of like that. Yeah, someone was mentioning we should maybe have the padding on the right match the padding on the left. Right now we have way too much padding on the right. Yeah, so this should be PL10 and then probably PR3 or maybe PR4. I'll have to just kind of eyeball it. So this is with 3. That kind of feels like a little too tight for me. With the magnifying glass, because of what we talked about before, where the view box is a little bit bigger, there's actually a little bit of extra space. So I think 4 is probably gonna be a good compromise here. Yeah, that kind of feels like the right amount of padding on the right to me. So I think I'm pretty good with that. The size, I'm not sure about. I think like me and Steve had it kind of filling the available space, but really that's just like a matter of determining what do we want the minimum size of the input to be. So anyways, let's work on this little filters button. So let's export this this icon. Now this is going to be a bit of a challenge because Steve drew this right in Figma and we don't have it on like the 24 pixel by 24 pixel artboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it in, and honestly this is actually probably fine. This is probably centered in a sane way. Because all he probably did was take this menu icon and edit it a little bit. Let's just see. Is it centered? Yeah, it's centered. So I feel pretty comfortable just copying this 24 pixel version and throwing that into SVGO, grabbing, we got the background color. We don't want the background color. Copy as SVG. Grab that. We'll slam that inside the button. And we can get rid of this fill none thing. There's some artifacts kind of from SVGO, stuff that we don't need to keep, that it doesn't know that we don't need to keep. Even this like fill rule stuff, I'm 99% sure because there's only one path, it won't make a difference. So let's see. It looks like he's probably using the same size for this as he did for that, which we made H6. So let's go with H6, W6 for this. For color, he's got, what has he got for color here? Gray 500. So we can say fill current text gray 500. We can make this button inline flex probably, so we get stuff next to each other. I think the text for the button is probably white. Yeah. So let's wrap this in a span. We'll give it a class of text white. And for the font weight, he's using medium. So we'll go font medium. And then we're going to have a little bit of padding or a little bit of margin on the left here. So why don't we start with like an ML2 and see how that feels. That's probably maybe a little bit too much. Try that and see how it ends up looking. And yeah, now we just got to do this button. So this is just a button that's gray 700. So we can go BG gray 700. It looks like it's got rounded LG, 8 pixel border radius. And it's got a shadow on it, which I'm pretty sure is just the Tailwind's basic shadow. Okay, so now we're going to need some horizontal padding. So maybe we'll do PX4. And that feels a little bit too much. It looks pretty close on the right-hand side, but the left-hand side is a little much, again, because of the view box size of the icon. So let's go with PR4 and then maybe PL3, kind of like we did with the search. And that looks pretty close, I think. So we have no focus state or hover state, so why don't we try that? I know in the design, Steve has sort of like an active filter state that's like lighter color. I think we could do that for the hover state too. So why don't we do hover BG gray 600. Yeah, kind of feels decent. And then for the focus state, I think maybe we'll just do the same thing. We'll just do focus, outline, none. We'll try the shadow outline. This is kind of like a nicer looking focus ring that follows the border radius. I think that's actually not too bad. Yeah, seems okay to me. I was going to suggest we just do like the same hover color, but because we're going to use that for the active state too, that makes it hard to know if it has focus once it's active. So this will probably have to do. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to focus on this mobile view for now. Like I'm trying to decide like, okay, should we jump to making this responsive, blah, blah, blah. I think what's a better thing to do is just build this screen out, and then we can work through the different sort of states where things are open or closed, and as well as the responsive stuff. Tailwind doesn't have any transitions functionality built in currently, but it is something we're going to cover in the course. I'm doing it sort of custom because I think it's a good example of custom stuff in Tailwind, because you are sort of expected to do custom stuff once in a while. Mobile, you can't really have hover for mobile. There's no such thing. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question though, so if I am, just let me know. Okay, so let's see. We'll do this Los Angeles stuff. So we'll show the UI, hide the layers thing again. So this is going to be text gray 900 and font size 20. So text gray 900, text XL. And I just kind of have these sizes memorized, which is probably a bit of an unfair advantage, but you learn them pretty quick. So this is going to be text gray 600. What do we got for weight here? Regular. Yeah, okay. So for this main section, we're probably going to want the PX4 as well, and also some vertical padding. I just don't know how much. Looks like actually more vertical padding. Like this is taller than what we had there. So let's try PY6. That feels like pretty close to me. Maybe you could even go a little bit more. It'd be nice if we could like perfectly line these up, so when we toggle back and forth, we're seeing them truly the same, but still, it's pretty close. Okay. All right, so then we're going to have like a section that contains all of the listings for that city. So we'll make a div here, and then inside of that div, we're going to have a div for this element. It's going to have an image. And this is from Unsplash. I don't really know. I wonder if if there's like meta details in the image, maybe in like the layer list, where I can more easily find where Steve got this image, but no. So we don't necessarily have to find the exact same one, but I bet you it won't be that hard to find if we just search like modern home or something. That's probably how Steve found it. It'd be nice if we could get the same image, just because it's a little easier to compare our work. And I don't want to export it from Figma. I'd rather just reference it from Unsplash. A modern house. Oh yeah, this is getting us closer. Because I recognized some of those images. We can also do a Google reverse image search. Surprised I can't find it. Modern mansion. I'm sure Steve was searching for something like this to find it. All right, let's cheat. Well, I still refuse to actually export it from Figma, but I'm comfortable. Is this kind of mask on it, or is this cropped in some way? How do you get the original image that was used for this? Well, let's just see, when does it stop resizing? Something like that. Let's just export that quickly as a JPEG. And then we'll just do images.google.com and see if this actually will find it. See if it's smart enough. Oh, he took it from Airbnb? Maybe? Yeah, so it's not from Unsplash. Son of a gun. You sure it's from Unsplash? I don't think it's from Unsplash. That's fine. We'll use a different one. You think it's from Unsplash, eh? It says Unsplash in this file name. This is probably a pretty boring part of the stream here. We're probably losing people left and right. Is this no? Let's search house pool. We're gonna find this damn image. Modern house pool. All right, this is stupid. We should just pick a different image and move on. But now I just have to pick an image that I think looks cool. It actually is like a nice outdoor one. Mediterranean house, is that where you think I'm going to find it? Villa? Ah, you're a genius. We did it. Okay. That is what I'm talking about. Teamwork. Okay. All right. Let's get back to our design now. Hide this UI. Find where we were working from. All right. So I need to memorize what this keyboard shortcut is for just hiding the layers panel. Oh, beautiful. Okay. All right. Who's in my file? All you people. What did you do? You typed in the URL? Okay. So we got this image. We're going to want to add some rounded corners to it. Probably the same as always. Did you people literally just like type out this friggin' ID to find this this file? You're killing me. All right. Where's the shadow? There's a shadow behind here. I'm trying to figure out what layer it's on. This one probably? Yeah, so it's an MD shadow on the actual image. So I'll add that. All right, so we got that MD shadow. One tricky thing that we're going to want to figure out eventually is like setting an exact aspect ratio, which will probably be something that we figure out as in the course. I'll probably use it as an example to write a custom plugin. But for now, we'll just maybe hard code in a height or something. Steve's got a height of 280, which is 17.5 rem, which is 70. We have H64, which is not quite there. Let's see. But we can just use that in lieu of that value for now. Yeah, object fit plus some aspect ratio helpers, and we'd be good to go. All right, so we got this image. I'm going to wrap the image in a div just in case we need to have a container for it, because it's kind of like the image section. And then we kind of get this card section down below. So let's think about how we want to make this card. We use an H4 for this modern home in city center. I never know what semantically this element should be. Should it just be like a div with some stuff in it? Like a span that says plus, and then like a div with 3 beds. Is this mid dot? That's the thing, right? 2 baths. And then underneath here, I guess like a div with 1,400 a week. Probably wrap this in a span. And this in a span so we can style them. And then a div for the reviews. We'll get the icons later. All right. So let's just kind of see here. All right, so let's just kind of get the bones in place. So this div is going to have a white background. It's going to have rounded corners. It's going to have some padding. Let's see, probably the same padding that we're using almost everywhere else. So like PX4, PY3, maybe something like that to start. Look at you people with your hands. What are you doing? All right. Can I hide you people somehow? You're killing me here. I feel bad removing people. You are looking at it just to learn. Just keep your cursors away from my UI so I can see what I'm doing. Cool. So let's work on this general positioning maybe. So this card has like an LG shadow on it. So I add like shadow LG. And I'm trying to think like what's the best way to bring the width in a little bit. There's two ways I can think. One way is to add like margin on the outside of the card. Another way is to put it in a container with horizontal padding. For some reason that sounds better to me because of poor experiences with collapsing margins in the past. So yeah, that kind of brings it in nicely. You can turn off the cursors in the view settings. Oh yeah, get out of here. All right, that's nice. Thank you. And then we want to pull this up. So let's just do like a negative MT16 or something. We'll do like position relative on this so that it has a Z index. Maybe probably 16 is going to be fine. We'll just have to kind of see how it ends up once we actually do the styling inside of it. No one needs to apologize for looking at the Figma file. I'm joking around. Okay, so let's look at this thing here. So we got teal 200, teal 800, font weight medium, and 12. Okay, so we're going to say BG teal 200, text teal 800, font medium, uppercase, tracking wide, text small, text extra small. My mistake. And I think we might want to go with like a slightly heavier font weight because Steve's using this font Graphic, which is just like a little bit heavier than most other fonts at the same weight. So let's try semi-bold. That looks a little more accurate. And we can do like rounded full, so we get like, kind of like a pill look. And we can do like PX2 maybe, PX1. We're probably going to want to give this like an inline block display at least. Yeah. It's pretty close, really. We could go with like a PX2 and like a letting none. Oh, sorry, PY2. That's too tall. Okay, we could go with a PY1, letting none. What was the letting normal? That was 2. Oh, okay. I guess we just weren't doing anything. This is probably good. Okay, so we'll do the 3 beds, 2 baths thing. What do we got here? Still extra small, gray 600. Text XS, text gray 600. Font, we'll go semi-bold since we're converting that. Also, it needs to be uppercase. Tracking wide. What's the, is there another HTML entity for a fatter bullet? It's just BULL. Is that like the fatter one? Yeah, okay, that's what we want. Okay, so let's make this flex. And need some margin here, ML2 at least. Is thick dot a real thing? I think we need some more vertical padding on this. So go with 4. All right. So now this text, text gray 900, font semi-bold, text LG. Yeah, not the same font again, but looks pretty good, really. It's actually pretty close. Is it actually rendering as the same font? Can't tell if I'm like blind or if graphic is like truly appearing very similar to San Francisco. This looks like dangerously similar to me. No, it's different in some places actually. Yeah, the M is a little different. A lot of things are really similar though. Cool. All right, so that's pretty decent. The space, maybe a little bit of vertical margin. Maybe a little bit less. All right, so then here we've got 900, 600. And probably like a tiny bit of margin on the left. What do we have for font size here? Is it mixed? 16, 14. So this is going to be text SM. It should be baseline aligned already. Okay. Maybe a little bit of space above this div, like MT1 sort of thing. And then we've got this reviews section at the bottom. So this is 14,600. Text SM, text gray 600. And I guess we can do our stars now. So the stars are going to be sort of tricky because one place where our little artboard trick falls apart a little bit is when you want the icons to be like totally left aligned to the edge of everything else. So you can see these are like 11.51 pixels, so that's kind of weird already. I think we should still go with a 24 pixel artboard. I wonder if Steve has a star. Let's see. Yeah, this looks like it's probably the same thing that he used to make the other stars. So let's just grab this circle and delete it. Now you can see the dilemma, right? Like if we want these stars to go all the way to the left, this is going to be a problem. And I don't really want to have to like counteract that with like negative margin. So I think we're probably better off making the star bigger. So let's just link these for a second. It's weird that it's not a square. Anyways, we'll try this and see how it works out. We might have to think of a slightly different solution if we don't like it. Okay, so we'll get rid of the fill. Now, what dimensions were these stars approximately? They are 11 by 11, and that's probably going to be we'll just try. H3W3 I think is going to feel a little bit too small. But we'll see. Color is teal 500. I think Figma is the best UI design tool you can buy, and it's free for most people's use cases. It's extremely performant. Like, it's incredible that it's a web app because it feels faster than Photoshop. It feels faster than Sketch. It just works amazingly. Do you plan on maybe change some divs for other tags? I'm trying to be pretty good with the semantics of things. Like you can see, we're using a header for the actual header section. We've got a section for the sidebar. We've got a main here. We're trying to use headings appropriately. But for this thing, I don't really know if I would use anything besides kind of like divs and spans to mark this up, except for like where there's text. I'm not sure if you can have like multiple header tags on a page. I think they create a sectioning context or something, which I don't know if you can have multiple headers. I don't know. Something to research, but yeah, it never really occurred to me to do it that way. I'm going to go to live chat because I'm on top chat here too. Probably missing some stuff. Okay, so there's our little star, like literally little star. Let's see if we make it a little bit bigger, if that feels okay still. I think that actually feels like a nice size to me, and it doesn't feel like it's inset too much. So maybe this will actually work out okay. So we have a little bit of a gap that we gotta add, maybe like an MT2, maybe more. That's probably good. And we have, 5 stars? So we're gonna wanna do flex items center for this probably. And then we'll probably wrap this in a span so that we can give this a little bit of an extra left margin. Getting my window management all messed up here. Looks like pretty close, really. Anything about this that we don't like? Mostly looking at the spacing. I don't know. I think that's pretty good. So we've been going for a while, so I don't think I'm gonna go too much longer because there's some other stuff I want to do. But I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably stream for like an hour, like every day, as I work on this, because kind of my main project for this week is building out this UI and kind of getting it all done, so that I can kind of cut it up after the fact and figure out, okay, what order should we build things in for the course? Should we go all the way with this, or should I save some of that for a later lesson? But yeah, my main priority right now is just kind of getting everything built. So I think I might as well just build it all live so people can kind of follow along if they're interested. And then once we got it all figured out, next week, hopefully, I'll start working on the actual course videos and bang that out in hopefully probably a week and a half or something. Get those edited and then get them up. So maybe the last thing that we'll do is make sure that this gray area is full height. So oh yeah, photo is further down. Good call. So we need a little bit of top margin here. Let's just do that quickly. MT4 maybe? Come on, there we go. Maybe MT. I don't really like using MT5 for things. That's probably good. I like how that looks. Okay, so the last thing I want to do maybe before we stop for today and save some more stuff for the rest of the week is get this gray area to be full height. 2 ways I can think to do that. One is we could just go to like our HTML and we could add like a class here. We could just say bg gray 200. I think, yeah, now the whole body will always be that color. But with these like SPA sort of apps, it's not always the best idea, I think, to be mucking around with your public template, because a lot of apps you actually don't even have access to it. I'll explain the margin thing in a second. Don't let me forget. The way that we could do that in this case, though, that I like to do is just set like a min height on the app div. So if we set the min height to be at least as tall as the screen, that'll kind of be enough and we'll be good to go. Cool. Okay, so the question was, any reason you prefer top margin over bottom? So I used to use bottom margin a lot more, and then my buddy Sam kind of convinced me, and I've read some stuff about this since too, that it makes a lot of sense to try and always use either only bottom margins and right margins or only left margins and top margins, so that like your margins are always declared in the same direction. That avoids like weird collapsing margin problems and stuff where you have like a bottom margin on one thing and a top margin on another and they combine, so you can get unexpected results if you're mixing margins. The reason that I was convinced to always use left margins and top margins is that when you use a bottom margin, you're actually affecting, by declaring a bottom margin on this element, I'm affecting the position of this element, right? Like I'm saying anything that comes after this should be moved by 6 units. But by using a top margin, this is actually affecting the element that it's declared on. This is saying move me down by this amount. And I really like the idea of all my declarations on an element affecting that element instead of affecting surrounding elements. So by adding a margin top to this, it's actually moving this div, whereas adding a margin bottom here doesn't move this tag, it moves this tag. So it doesn't really make a difference, and I still do use bottom margins for certain things. One example would be like, say you had like a conditional thing that was shown only if there was an error. Like say you had like a v if, errors or something, and had like a warning message here. I would put like a bottom margin on this because this shouldn't have to know that this ever exists. You know what I mean? This should sort of like be declared based on this element, not based on whether this element is there. So if this is going to pop into the DOM, then I'm going to make sure it creates room for itself. But generally, I prefer to use top margins and left margins these days. And again, it doesn't actually matter that much. I think what matters more is that you use like either bottom and right or top and left. But it makes sense to me, sort of from a mental model perspective, that a margin should affect the element that I'm adding it to. This has only been a recent change for me. I didn't start doing this until probably a few months ago, but it's kind of become second nature now. So it's just, I never think about it. I never just decide, am I using left or am I using right or am I using top or am I using bottom? I just have a rule. Always use top, always use left, unless it's a dynamically inserted element that needs to create space for itself. And that's just one less thing to think about. So, yeah, I think that's probably a good place to stop for today. And I'll probably do another one tomorrow, and we can maybe work on getting like some of these menus to work, or working on some of the responsive stuff. So hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully there's a couple cool tricks in there. And yeah, thanks everyone. See ya for the next stream.